So let's go through the Seder. And before we go there, there's specific mitzvot that we need to complete during that first night of Pesach. And so it's once telling the story, correct?
Time out. First night and the second night.
Okay, first night and the second night.
Okay, just making sure.
Okay.
And if you're listening in Israel and you live in Israel, only the first night. But for most people listening, first night and second night.
So there's full-blown Seders 2 nights in a row.
Full-blown Seders.
Yeah.
Two full-blown Seders.
We're talking like 5 hours. Some people go as much
Okay.
as 6 or 7.
I don't know if my wife, I think she is aware of that she's going to be preparing
She
2
knows
Seders.
much better than you.
Okay. So
You were not aware.
so it's telling the story. 4 cups of wine, that's a specific mitzvah on its own.
It's a rabbinic mitzvah, yes.
Okay.
The idea is that each cup of wine represents one of the terminologies used in the Torah for the redemption.
Okay.
V'hotzeiti, v'hitzalti, v'ga'alti, v'lakachti. God will take us out. God saved us. God redeemed us, and God took us. Each one of them we celebrate with a glass of wine
Okay.
or grape juice.
Continue with the list of mitzvahs.
Okay. So
Matzah,
eating the matzah,
eating the matzah, telling the story.
and there's a 4th one, I believe.
Myrrh. Myrrh is also
The bitter herbs.
The bitter herbs.
It's also a biblical commandment. Yeah.
Okay. And it is also one of the mitzvahs to tell it to the children. Is that the key?
That's telling the story.
Telling the story to the. Okay.
The actual phrase in the Torah is "V'gata levincha." You should tell it over to your children.
Okay. So take me through the Seder. Make me prepare me. If I don't do a good job, it'll be your fault. So lay it on me. How do I do this?
I'm going to do something which is very unconventional. I think we should all sing the kadesh. Kadesh orchatz karpas yachatz magid rachza motzi matzah maror korech shulchan orech tzafon barech halel nirsa. Those are the 15 different steps of the Seder.
That's beautiful.
Boom. So now you'll review it.
You can't come over to my house and sing
And
that.
sing it
It's
for
like
you.
an a cappella band. That was beautiful.
If you pass me the haggadah right there, I'll show you that right at the beginning. It's one of the things that traditionally our children would sing, and you have the list right over here on
Okay,
page
so I need
number
to-
This
20,
is an ancient thing, by the way.
23.
This started in the times of the Talmud already.
that they would sing it.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is the 15 orders right there.
Okay. And is that what you just?
Exactly what we just sang.
Oh, beautiful. Okay. All right. So
Rewind, replay.
just
On halftime.
let's sort of give an overview summary of the Seder. Whoever wants
So
to go
you can
first.
start with the first one. What's the first one? Kadesh.
Okay, Kadesh, which is what you just did. It's
The Kaddish isn't the singing of this.
okay. That's like the bracha.
Right. The Kaddish is the Kiddush that we make also for Shabbos.
But
and
he
other
explains right
holidays.
there in the middle what each one is.
Okay.
Just to our friends who are
Yeah.
watching this, we recommend you get a good haggadah. Any of the art scroll haggadahs are terrific. There's also the Mezeka just put out a new haggadah. Feldheim has a great haggadah. Right? Any haggadah.
You don't like Maxwell House?
Yeah, I was thinking that.
I love Maxwell House coffee on Pesach when it's the only option.
Good answer.
You got a free advertisement there, Maxwell, so don't sue me.
So instead of me going through so this is basically the order. This is everything we're doing right here.
Exactly.
Okay. So and so you're saying that bracha, you're singing it.
It's not a bracha. It's just we're
just
just
a-
reading off all of those names.
Okay.
Kadesh or
Kadesh is yeah.
Well, Kadesh will be a blessing. Yes, we're going to make Kiddush.
Okay.
We're going to sanctify the day.
Okay. So it starts with a cup of wine.
Yeah,
Yeah, a couple.
that's
Okay.
the first part.
And actually, this year it's also going to include the havdallah, the separation between Shabbos and the weekday. So there's like a
On the first night, I thought the havdallah would wait until
No.
Monday.
So because this year Pesach immediately follows the Shabbos,
Right.
so we have to make havdallah between Shabbos and even a holiday. You still make a havdallah. It's an abbreviated form. You don't have the spices. You don't smell the spices.
Okay.
You just have the flame, and you make a blessing on the flame and a blessing on the separation.
So you do light the havdallah candle.
Well, you don't
Well,
light it. Yeah, but you
Here's
take
a
from
small holiday law that's
Okay.
important.
Okay.
You can, from an existing flame,
Right.
you can light a new flame on a holiday, right?
Right.
So now let's just play this out.
Okay.
You take your havdallah candle, and you go over to your stovetop, which is an existing flame. It's been on, right? Or
Right.
you have a yahrzeit candle. You have an existing flame. You go light your havdallah candle. You make havdallah.
Okay.
Now you're holding your havdallah candle. What are you not allowed to do on a holiday?
Extinguish.
You can extinguish that flame.
Right.
So you're going to have a long time holding that havdallah candle. It's going to create quite a problem.
Right.
So instead of using a havdallah candle in a
Okay.
situation like this, when you have a Shabbos and then a holiday, you use just 2 candles that you're able to hold together
Okay.
for havdallah, and then you just place them down and let them burn out. Place them on the table.
Put
They're
them
beautiful.
on the table and use them on
You
your
put
table.
them by next to your the candles that you lit for the holiday.
Right.
You put them
You
in a
could
safe
put them
place.
in the place where you had the Shabbos candles.
Put them
from
in
the
a safe
previous night.
place, but that is why you do not specifically don't light your havdallah candle, because you're going to be stuck.
You're gonna be stuck
A
with a big
conceptual
pile of
point
wax.
as well, the actual blessing for Havdallah is modified as well. Normally, after Shabbos, we'll say, Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you Hashem, hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol, who distinguishes, separates between holy and the profane, the mundane. But here, since we're not moving into the mundane world, we're going
Right.
straight into a Yom Tov, we're going to say ben kodesh the kodesh. He distinguishes between holy and holy. So but we do make that Havdallah because we are moving down. Despite all of the fanfare that Pesach has and all of the holidays that are so incredible, like Rabbi Wolbe said, Shabbos
It's the holiest day of the year.
it's the holiest.
Even
so-
though it happens 52 times a year.
Right.
It's amazing. So we are going to be descending a little bit in the holiness, but so there is that distinction. But we say Bein Kodesh the Kodesh to indicate that we're still moving into a holy day.
Okay. Great.
Okay, so you start with Kiddush,
okay.
right? And which includes in this section Havdallah. And then you move straight into washing your
What's
hands.
the next
Right.
thing
To
on the list?
washing
Yeah,
your hands.
so you-
Go ahead, you
Orchatz.
could read it.
Yeah.
Orchatz.
So you're washing your hands, and then the carpus.
And then we eat the karpas. Very good.
Okay.
Orchatz, just an important note. Normally, when we wash our hands, we make a blessing.
Yeah.
Al Netilas Yadayim. Not this time.
Why?
So wash it-
Oh, no bread. No, it's still.
Yes. Well, it's.
I mean, it's still matzah.
You're correct. It's because we're not washing for bread. The actual reason that we're washing is because in a moment with karpas, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to dip a vegetable in water. And this is actually a fairly little known halacha law that anytime that you're touching and eating vegetables that are wet, you should wash your hands just like you would for bread, but with no blessing.
Okay, so the yadayim is for right before you eat bread.
Correct.
Now, does it apply right before you eat matzah?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just here, the next thing you're doing is you're eating.
Yeah, spoiler,
Okay.
it's going to be one of the steps.
Okay.
Yeah. And also, when we're washing our hands, we're actually, there's also the symbolic idea that we're elevating ourselves, because water, just like entering and immersing into a mikvah, into a body of water,
Okay.
has that ability to elevate us and to reconnect us to the source, our source, which is the water, which is the Garden of Eden, which is all these ideas are spoken about a lot. But the idea of washing our hands is returning our hands to that source. So the food itself also needs a bit of elevation as well.
Okay.
So we dip the food in the salt water to elevate the food as well.
Okay.
Just a small, simple, symbolic idea.
And if my memory serves me correct, but there's probably more deeper meaning, the carpus. It's a green vegetable.
It has to be a potato.
No,
Oh, really?
Not have to be a
I
potato.
like never have potato.
There's a huge debate about what you're supposed to use for karpas. People have different traditions.
Right. It actually, it just says here a vegetable.
A vegetable. It leaves it up
Okay.
to your tradition.
Okay.
And if you don't have a tradition, what do?
Potato.
Of course, because Rabbi Chaim said it has to be a potato.
So what do you guys?
I happen to like the potato more, but my wife's family never did a potato. They did celery.
That's what we do.
Yeah, so
And I'm like, why celery? Like, literally nobody likes celery.
I think that's the
Why?
reason.
But maybe that's why.
So
Maybe
you
that's
don't need a lot of
specifically why. Well,
I
first of
love
all,
potatoes.
But
first of all,
Potato
so you don't-
chips.
It's
We want our
representing
kids
something
to
with the
question
salt
it,
water,
huh?
right?
What?
So
We want our
there's
kids to
two
question
there's two symbolisms here. There's many symbolisms here,
Okay.
but I think a simple one is, and maybe not for potatoes, but the idea of having there are many customs that it's celery, parsley, a green leafy vegetable, something
Yeah.
that you can actually see the life in it, the green, the freshness,
Right.
and it's really putting you in a frame of mind of this is the springtime. Right?
Okay.
These are we can only access these type of food when stuff starts growing again.
Okay.
And so this is the springtime of our Judaism. We're experiencing a huge burst of growth here at the Seder.
Right.
So we have that immediately at the beginning is like set the tone for the Seder. I am in growth mode. Right? I'm going to go through a lot of ups and downs through the Seder.
Okay.
I'm going to have energy. I'm going to get tired. I may get a second wind, right? I'm going to have a cup of wine. It's going to make me a little loopy, and then I'm going to come back down, and then I'm going to have another cup of wine. I'm going to stuff myself with matzah. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs.
Right.
Set the tone right at the beginning. This is rebirth and renewal happening right now.
Right.
So that was a long time ago because Jews didn't know about potatoes until the 13, 14.
Big advocate for potatoes. I feel like the potato lobby got involved in
About 700 years ago, we
I think
upgraded
it's all a
already.
repair for the Mr. Potato Head band.
So do you have a baked potato, and you're dipping a baked potato in salt water?
Well, so is it an important thing is that it needs to be a small amount. You can't eat too much of
Like
it.
little russet potatoes?
Yeah. Tiny
Okay.
little red one.
They can be
Okay.
pieces also. That doesn't.
Okay.
No, they cut them up.
Now, why the salt water?
So salt water, something
Tears.
bitter,
They're
tears,
tears.
is
Okay.
understanding the context of, yes, we're experiencing renewal, but we have to understand, where did this spring forth from? It
It
came
came
out of something that was so bitter and so terrible, that process that we had to go through in Egypt to separate ourselves from the Egyptians, to become
Right.
a nation born out of another nation, right? Living
Right.
amongst the Egyptians and then coming out, just being taken by Hashem, understanding that. So we have to put ourselves also in that mindset from the beginning, is that there was extreme pain. And let's start to experience some of that pain, because experiencing it together tonight will allow us to spring forth
Right.
from.
There's also something that salt is a
sense.
preservative, which is one of the reasons we dip our challah in salt. Whenever we cut our challah, we dip it in salt. On Shabbos particularly, right? We have salt on the table. And the reason we do that is because salt is a preservative. And what we're saying is that the relationship between us and the Almighty will be preserved for forever. So when we're taking this vegetable, we're dipping it specifically in salt water to say, yes, although it was bitter, although it was difficult for us, but God never forgot about us. That relationship is there forever.
Right.
It was specifically the tears and our crying out that awakened God's compassion for us and led to the redemption in the first place. That is
Right.
what he saw. That is what he heard. That led to that, to him speaking to Moses, and eventually leading to the redemption. So those tears also not only signified the growth that we had, but like Rabbi Wolbe's saying, it was that connection that is inseparable.
Yeah.
Unbreakable.
Unbreakable. Okay, unbreakable.
So the whole thing with the plant is it begins with a seed that decomposes. So it's sort of like this growth that we have is always going to be preceded by moments of maybe pain
doubt,
and
of
struggle, and that's going to happen throughout the year for all of us. Maybe not you guys, but for me, where you have some struggles, and then from that comes growth, and that
Right,
takes us
you're
with
the
us.
only one who struggles. Nobody else struggles.
That's a great point. If you note, there's this really interesting juxtaposition throughout the whole night that can be a little bit confusing. Like, we're eating matzah, which Rabbi Wolbe said is the bread of affliction, the bread of poverty, right? It's supposed to be sad, and then we eat maror, which is supposed to make us, bitter. We don't enjoy that, and salt water for tears. Like, it's a sad night, but on the other hand, we're supposed to be like royalty the whole night.
Right.
And we have all of our finest things, and we lean to the side when we eat. We'll discuss that later. And so we have this very, like, am I supposed to be enjoying it like I'm on top of the world, I'm the king, or am I supposed to be sad? So it can.
And the
appear
matzah
confusing.
has that dual nature to it too. It's like this dual nature of everything. It's of slavery and freedom.
Yes.
All this is sort of like
They
two sides of
weren't
the same
slaves.
coin.
They weren't slaves when they were eating it. They only ate it after they left.
Okay.
I mean, the reason was that they didn't have time to let the dough rise because they were rushed out. So they weren't slaves technically at the point they were eating it.
True. But isn't it? How did you refer to matzah?
Bread of affliction.
The
bread of
from
affliction.
Proverbs.
Okay, so that's-
Lechem oni.
That's sort of the opposite side of the coin. And then the affliction and the freedom, they're very intertwined.
Right.
You
So
can't have the one without the other.
Right. So it's
and all of this also is supposed to, like Rabbi Wogelanter was saying, the experiential nature of the whole night. That it's specifically, we have such a stark contrast of experiencing such pain and intense mourning for the pain that we suffered before, and then on the other hand, we have this very extreme on the opposite end of the spectrum where we're lounging like royalty.
Right.
It's to really experience that transition, to really feel what it would have been like to move from a state of slavery
Yeah.
into that state of incredible freedom. We need to maximize that experience of the contrast.
That contrast is so great because you have at the beginning of when we start eating later on in the later on in the Seder, so we have the matzah, the motzi matzah, and that we eat leaning to our side because that's royalty. Then we eat the maror, that we eat sitting upright because that's not royalty. And then we eat the maror with the bitter herbs that we do lean again. So you're going back and forth right there experiencing this is royalty, this is not royalty, this is royalty again. And this, right, you understand? So
Yeah.
that contrast comes and goes constantly throughout the night. We see the ups and downs of the Jewish people. They're almost there, no, but they're not. But they're almost there, but they're not.
Right.
And, and that's the, I was just talking to somebody just this week. He was telling me, so many struggles. It's so difficult. I said, thank God. That means you're a healthy human being. Because if you had no problems, you're probably dead.
Right.
Right? It's like in the EKG, when you do an echocardiogram of the heart of someone's, right? So a healthy person will have an up and a down, and an up and a down, and an up and a down, and an up and a down. Well, what's if it's just flatlined? Well, that's when they're dead. Right? They have no more challenges.
Right.
Healthy people have ups and downs. So welcome to the club. Okay.
So in the whole thing you start off with, Rabbi Busco, up, but this is a time to make it experiential. That there's an idea here too that the Jewish people throughout history, there's going to be that point like when Joseph is in the dungeon, next thing you know he's running all of Egypt. That type of transition is something that I think he wants to ingrain in us, that there will be that point in time where...
And in no time later, the Jewish people are slaves, and no time later, they're out of slavery and in freedom.
Yeah.
And then you constantly have that struggle.
So everything's meant to be transitory for growth.
And the Jewish people are at the highest point ever, right? The revelation of God at Mount Sinai, and 40 days later, their idolatry, ridden. So it just doesn't make, that's the reality of healthy people.
But it means that it doesn't matter what your circumstances are, what your situation is. You should never allow yourself to be defined by that, because if it could change in a second. It could change literally like a flip of a switch. I gotta say it that way. But if it could change just like that, then that means your situation literally does not define you.
Right.
What happens next maybe, but you don't know what's gonna happen next. God can take you out in a second. So we should not only experience that tonight or during the Seder, but we should recognize that means that at every moment of our lives, we're not going to let our circumstances define us and limit us to what we are in that moment, because it could change in a second.
Beautiful. Okay. Let's go on to Yachatz, the breaking the middle of the matzah. Walk me through this and what it means. And
So we break the middle matzah.
Yeah. So there are 3 matzahs.
Okay, so you have 3 matzahs. They're covered up. You take the middle one, you break it in half.
Right. So the top one is called the Kohen, then the Levi, and then Yisrael. Anybody who says that there isn't, what are they called? Inequality in Judaism or in the world, it's false. There is inequality. You will never get the first aliyah in synagogue because you're not a Kohen. Neither will I. Right. Only a Kohen will. The second aliyah is for a Levi. The Kohen are the prominent, okay, the most prominent. And then is the Levi, and then is the Israelites, the majority of us. Are you a Levi?
No.
Look, we're all Israelites here. We're only going to get the third aliyah and down, okay? We're never getting the first 2. That's the reality.
Right.
So, sit down. Back to the matzah, right? We have 3 matzahs. We have the Kohen, the Levi, and Yisrael. We take the Levi matzah, right, and we crack it in half.
Why the Levi?
Rabbi Walgolanter will explain that.
Wait 1 second. Why are we cracking a matzah, first of all?
Okay.
Yeah. And then why is it?
What are we doing? Let's just talk about what we're actually doing.
Yeah.
Rabbi Chaim wants to say.
No, it sounded like you have something to say.
No, I'm just posing a question. I'm saying, like, before you get to symbolism.
The purpose for cracking the matzah is we're simultaneously doing 2 things. With these 2 pieces, the bigger half we're going to set aside for later. That's going to be the afikomen.
Okay.
That we're going to hide and eat for dessert, yummy dessert at the end of the night.
Right.
The smaller half is going to be what's called the lechem oni. That's the matzah that we're going to eat, which represents the brokenness, the bread of affliction, and that we're going to make the hamotzion, the blessing for hamotzi, together with a full matzah as well. Actually, 2 full matzahs, so that we can have
Lechem Mishnah.
lechem
So we'll
mishnah.
continue to use that smaller one as
We
part
will
of
use
our
it, right.
part of our Seder.
Okay.
Bigger piece gets put away for later.
Okay.
And then as part of our storytelling and experiential part, we're going to continue using a piece of this.
The half, the smaller
The
half.
smaller
you
half
broke
that
in the
you're
middle.
leaving on your Seder plate,
Okay.
or with your matzah.
Okay.
Now,
matzahs.
anytime someone asks you at your Seder, why do we do something? You say, so that you ask the question.
Right. So
That's
there-
exactly why we do it. So that's a good safe, you have a safe answer to any question. It's so that our children also ask. Specifically, that we want them, we do odd things at the Seder
Right.
so that our children keep asking questions.
Right.
But
And-
there are really 2 other reasons. Just
No, there are hundreds of other
Yes.
reasons.
There are hundreds, right? But there are
Right.
2 main reasons.
Okay.
One is because we need to get in the mindset of a poor person, and a poor person breaks his food. He splits his food in half, and then actually he always puts aside the bigger portion for later, and he saves the bigger portion for his second meal.
Right.
So that's what we're doing. We're essentially putting aside the bigger portion.
Okay.
So that's just getting into the mindset of what it means to be poor and afflicted and so on. But there's really a second aspect to that I only heard a few years ago, and it really resonated. What we're going to use the larger portion of the matzah for, eventually at the end of the night, is what we call the afikomen, the matzah that we hide away, and is going to represent the karban pesach, the Passover sacrifice, the Paschal lamb, whatever, that
Okay.
we don't actually have today, that they would eat for dessert, like you said, dessert.
Right.
They would actually eat the Paschal lamb for dessert at the end of their Passover meal.
Right.
So the reason why we're putting it away is because this is the thing we anticipate the most. This is the thing we're waiting for. It's the thing we want. Our
Right.
entire Seder is heading on a crash course to this one moment when we finally get to take out the afikomen
Right.
and enjoy it. We finally get to partake of the whole focus of the day. Well, not the focus, but the main course, the Passover sacrifice.
Right.
What does this Passover sacrifice represent? What is this piece of matzah, the larger piece that we're putting aside?
Yeah.
It represents our olam haba. It represents our future reward. That while we're going through the journey, while we're going through our ups and downs,
Right.
we always have our eyes on the prize. We're always keeping our mind focused on that final goal, on that moment when we can enjoy the like you said, our desserts, when we can enjoy our final
Okay.
reward in the world to come. But we got to go through that process. We got to go through that journey first, and sort of got to hold ourselves back and contain ourselves so we don't just jump all over it. We got to leave it to the end of the meal. The kids actually steal it. That's a whole other thing.
Okay.
That's
Let's
more
talk-
of the chaos, yeah.
And since we missed my Hebrew study with you, and what is, so you can teach me some, what is afikomen? How do you translate that? What's the English equivalent
Dessert.
to that?
It means
Yeah.
dessert. I
Oh,
think it's
really?
Greek,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
So the idea is that is our olam haba, that is our final reward.
Okay.
That they didn't experience fully, even leaving the land of Egypt. They didn't experience the final reward that God is, the culmination of all their efforts. They didn't experience that yet. We're not going to experience that till after the Messiah comes and after the entire process of the world is completed. But at least to have our eyes on the prize and then finally get a taste of it at the end, that is the second reason that we break the matzah and we set aside that portion for the end of the journey.
Nice.
With
Okay.
the breaking also, there's a deep Kabbalistic tradition
Mhm.
that when you break it, you should break it in a way that the bigger piece looks like a vav and the smaller piece looks like a hey. The reasons for that I'm not allowed to disclose to you, but there's a trick for how to do it. You want to know the secret?
Yeah, I'm trying to visualize breaking a matzah to look like a hey. I'm gonna
Yeah.
end up with just like a
It's
total mess.
It's not easy, but I'll tell you the secret how
Okay.
to do it. When you break it, you tell your family, look, this is a vav and this is a hey. Can't you see it? And then you put it away.
Okay.
Quickly. Very
That's how it
good.
works.
Nice.
Very
Excellent.
good. That was some deep Kabbalah. So that really gets you going into the main part of the haggadah, the
Right.
essence of the haggadah, which is magid. If the
Okay.
mitzvah of the night is to tell to the attendees, tell
Okay.
to yourself the story of the Exodus.
Right.
So that breaking the matzah and going in the experience of we're back in Egypt. It takes us right back there where we broke the bread. We didn't know where our next meal is coming from. We're
Right.
slaves. We're poor. We're down at the bottom. We're right back in there. Now we start telling a story. We enter into the section called Magid, which is the wordiest part of the haggadah.
Right.
But it's like that, set up like that, because that is where the storytelling happens.
Right.
That is exactly where the magic happens, is in Magid. Again, use everything to frame your mind, to get your mind to a certain place, and understand that every time there's an action in the Haggadah and something like that,
Yeah.
it's meant to be focusing you, getting you into a mood for the next section as well.
Okay.
So that's exactly what we're doing.
Magid, the word Magid, it is really the telling of the tale
Okay.
that is told by itself, really. Because if it is for me to be telling it, it would be lehagid, is to say.
Okay.
But it's Magid. We want it to be, like we said before, an experiential experience where the story almost tells itself.
Okay.
Right?
Almost like you're experiencing it, like you're witnessing it in the moment.
Right.
That's the story being written right
So
in front of your
it's
eyes.
not that you as the head of the table are just going to be listing off the story. You want it to become that the story becomes alive through the discussion that you have.
Okay.
And you need to feel it too, right? Because as the law is, and I think it says in the Haggadah, that even though the verse, the source for it is that you should teach your children, but the law is that even if you don't have any children, if you're making a Seder only by yourself, you have to say the whole thing out loud. It's internalizing the whole experiential nature of this. I mean, it's for you as well. So it's
Right.
not just, you're not the performer here. You're experiencing it.
And a good idea in preparing, in your situation, to lead a Seder.
Yeah.
But even to participate in a Seder, to put yourself in the right frame of mind.
Yeah.
I really think it's important to read through the Magid section of the Haggadah before you sit down. Don't just
Okay.
rely on what you remember from last year.
Okay.
But get yourself in the mindset. I know you don't like preparing the kids, but as an adult, I think you can do
for
it.
sure.
But I think read through it and understand where are the parts in here where would be a great springboard for conversation.
Yeah.
Even jot down some notes is like, hey, this is interesting. I'm not going to really, I'm not going to devote serious time to think about it right now, but this would be a great discussion to have over a glass of wine at the Seder in the middle of Magid. What's
Right.
with this word? What's with this idea? Why is this paragraph even here? How does this have anything to do with Pesach?
Right.
Ask those questions on every single paragraph and you'll discover a flow. Hopefully you'll uncover a flow and create a flow at the Seder, again, from slavery to freedom. Create that flow through the words of the Haggadah.
So there's actually an age-old custom that the Shabbos prior to Pesach, people would read the whole Magid. They would
Not a
read
joke.
it. Right.
Not
They
a
would
joke.
read
They
it
would
the Shabbos before, after Mincha. Everyone would sit down with the Haggadah and go through from Magid all the way through till we eat the meal part, the eating of the meal. And the reason is exactly like Rabbi Yaakov is saying here, that you want to get into the frame of mind. And when you read it and you start thinking, you have all these questions like come up, and like the idea is get into the frame of mind. This is it's not only a time of redemption on Passover. It's called Chodesh Agula, the month of redemption.
Okay.
The whole month is a time to prepare.
When you
Well,
say-
there's even a part of
it-
Magid that says that, right?
Yes.
They originally thought that, and
And
this is just a logical assumption. You would think that you'd have to start discussing this, telling over the story and engaging in the experience already from the beginning of the month, because that's when the whole thing started.
Right.
The first commandment that was given to the Jewish people, literally in their history, was given on Rosh Chodesh, which is the portion that we just read last Shabbos in Shul.
Right.
So the idea is that they thought, this is again just basic assumption, we're going to start discussing it from Rosh Chodesh, from the beginning of the month. And then they looked at the verse, and the verse states explicitly that it should be on this night. So they said, okay, so on this night we're gonna start discussing it, and we're gonna go over the story. But the basic assumption is it should be the entire month.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you say that the Shabbos before they typically read it, is that as part of a group or individually?
Individually.
Okay.
Individually. Every
Because
person.
this year you've got about 5 hours in between
Yeah.
Yeah.
the practice
Get
and
a
the real
reading.
thing.
Right.
I
Exactly.
think they might even do it this.
I think you do it this Shabbos. Yeah,
This
I think
Shabbos
you
they
could do it this Shabbos. It gives you a couple extra days to prepare.
Yeah,
and
it's
Come
interesting.
up with ideas, questions,
It's
insights.
interesting that we have these days to prepare for the Haggadah, but my father always points out that you never have a full week to prepare for the Shabbos of Bereshis. The beginning, where the first portion of the Torah, which is dealing with all of creation, with all of the mystical, deep, hidden secrets of creation, you don't have enough time to prepare for it ever. right?
Right.
For the haggadah, you have a full week to prepare at least. In fact, the halacha actually says that we should start preparing for Pesach a month before. So actually, the students would sit with their rabbis on Purim itself, which is exactly a month before Pesach, and start learning the laws of Pesach.